I grew up believing love would arrive quietly, like a soft breeze brushing against a still room. Something gentle and almost invisible, but life unfolded differently, teaching me that real love that shapes challenges and transforms has echoes that reach far beyond whispered doubts. My name is Elena Hart, a 27-year-old event designer from London. And for most of my life, I was told I wasn't wife material. The phrase followed me like a shadow, birthed in hushed conversations at family gatherings where relatives pretended to adore one another, while expertly slicing each other with judgmental remarks sharper than any knife laid on the dinner table. I was never graceful enough, never soft enough, never quiet enough, and certainly never obedient enough. My aunt would tilt her head in a sympathetic way that masked condescension and say, "Elena's too opinionated." Another would whisper, "She's too career-focused," as if a woman dreaming of something beyond domestic servitude was a flaw to be fixed. I heard it all growing up, the subtle digs, the half-smiles, the pitying looks. Women in my family believed being chosen by a man was the pinnacle of achievement, but I wanted a life defined by my own purpose. My ambition became ammunition, my independence their favorite insult. They said I was too bold, that men didn't marry women like me. Men dated us, enjoyed us, admired us from afar, but never committed. After hearing the same refrain for years, their words dug into my skin, leaving marks no mirror could reflect. When I finally moved to New York City, it felt like the first honest breath I had taken in years, the air sharp and electric, filling places inside me I thought were permanently bruised. I poured myself into my work, transforming spaces into worlds through light, sound, and artistic detail. Event design became my language, my sanctuary, and my rebellion. If I couldn't silence the whispers, I could drown them out with my own success. One winter afternoon, during preparations for a royal-themed cultural diplomacy gala, I met a man who would rewrite every rule I had been forced to memorize. Alexander Beaumont walked into the ballroom with a calm, almost regal poise, though nothing about him screamed arrogance. Dressed in a tailored navy suit with a subtle golden crest near his lapel, he carried an air of old-world aristocracy wrapped in modern charm. I didn't know yet that he was the heir to one of Europe's most influential dynastic families, a line stretching back through centuries of political marriages, royal alliances, and historical significance. All I saw was a man whose eyes softened when they landed on the decorations, who stepped toward my work as if it were something sacred. "You turned a simple venue into a kingdom," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "Teach me how to see the world the way you do." We ended up speaking for hours after the event ended, long after the guests had left, long after the staff had begun packing away drapery and floral arrangements. He asked questions, real questions about my vision, my childhood, my ambitions, and my dreams. And he listened like every answer mattered. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like too much or too little. I felt like enough. For weeks after, he invited me to dinners, art galleries, kata, and quiet walks through Central Park. He absorbed the world like an artist searching for meaning. Yet, he treated me as though I was the meaning. Being with him felt natural, effortless, like two pieces that were meant to fit but had taken years to find each other. But love, especially mine, never came without a test. Months later, I returned to London for a family gathering, something I wasn't looking forward to but felt obligated to attend. As expected, the atmosphere was its usual blend of forced smiles and hidden daggers. I had barely stepped into the living room when I heard the whispers, again too familiar, too sharp. "Elena, she's still single," one aunt said in disbelief, as if my relationship status were a headline of national concern. "She's sweet, sure," another replied, "but wife material? No, she's too ambitious for marriage." I stood frozen behind the doorway, the words slicing through me with painful precision. Then someone added, in a tone dripping with pity, "She'll probably end up alone. Some girls just don't have the qualities men want." The humiliation stung, but not in the way it used to. Instead of shrinking, instead of letting their ancient expectations bury me under shame, I felt something ignite a fire I hadn't known I still had. When I looked at them later, smiling and pretending I hadn't overheard anything, something inside me shifted. I didn't cry that night. I didn't break. I simply packed my bags, hugged my mother, and flew back to New York with a new kind of determination. Because what they didn't know, what I didn't feel obligated to share, was that I wasn't alone. I was in love, and not with just anyone. With a man who valued me for my strength, not despite it. With a man who asked for my opinions, celebrated my achievements, and looked at me like I was a miracle he had somehow been lucky enough to find. When I walked off the plane, Alexander was waiting for me at the terminal, holding a bouquet of pale peonies, the first flowers he ever gave me. His eyes brightened the second he saw me, and in that moment, every cruel whisper from London evaporated like fog touched by sunlight. As he wrapped his arms around me, I realized something powerful. They were wrong. They had always been wrong. Because Alexander and I weren't just dating anymore. We were falling fast, deep, and irrevocably. And the world's every person who doubted me, mocked me, or dismissed me was about to witness exactly how wrong they had been. Alexander and I grew closer with every passing day, our connection deepening in a way that felt both fated and startling. As if the universe had been waiting for us to collide. He wasn't like the men my family insisted I should choose, men who wanted to mold me, silence me, or clip my wings so I would fit neatly into their version of a proper wife. Instead, Alexander loved the very parts of me others tried to dilute. He admired my opinions even when they were bold, my sarcasm even when it startled him, my independence even when it meant I challenged him. He loved me not despite my fire, but because of it. One soft spring afternoon, he took me to a quiet lake in Windsor, a place shielded from the world by hedges that had grown for centuries. The earth beneath them shaped by the footsteps of generations. Magnolias bloomed in thick, fragrant clusters, their petals drifting like pale snowflakes on the surface of the water. Under their canopy, Alexander knelt, his hands trembling slightly as he opened a velvet box. Inside was a diamond so luminous it captured every shade of the sun gold, pink, white, and blue. "Elena Hart," he whispered with a reverence that tightened my chest. "You are my future. Will you marry me?" I didn't hesitate. The yes came out of me like a breath I'd been holding my entire life, a release of years of doubt, shame, and quiet aching. And just like that, my world transformed overnight. News of our engagement spread through London, New York, Paris, and every digital corner of the world with a hunger I didn't expect. Social media ignited. Tabloids hunted for details. Bloggers dissected my background. Strangers analyzed everything from my hair to my posture. The American-based British designer who stole the heart of a modern prince. One headline read, "But praise is never alone. Critics move with it like shadows." My own family, the people who had spent years telling me I wasn't wife materials, suddenly had plenty to say. And this time, their words didn't just sting. They sliced. "She's marrying royalty." My cousin scoffed as if it were a personal insult to her expectations. "What does he even see in her?" An aunt hissed in a WhatsApp group chat. "She's not elegant enough for royal life." Another relative added with the same tone she used to critique my outfits at age 15. It didn't stop there. People from my hometown, acquaintances who never looked at me twice, colleagues from part-time jobs I worked in college, they all found reasons to mock me. They shared old pictures of me from years ago, ridiculed my simple upbringing, and hinted that I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. One journalist even quoted an anonymous source who claimed, "She's too ordinary for a royal man." That sentence crawled under my skin, coiled itself around a part of me I thought had healed, and squeezed until breathing felt heavy. Alexander noticed the shift almost immediately. He saw the way my shoulders tensed every time my phone buzzed, the way my eyes dimmed while scrolling through comments, the way my smile faded too quickly. One night, he gently took the phone from my hands, set it aside, and cupped my face with a tenderness that grounded me. "They don't know you," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. but I do. And I love every version of you they never took time to see." His words weren't a shield, but they became armor. Preparations for the wedding officially began. And suddenly I found myself at the center of one of the most highly anticipated royal-adjacent ceremonies of the decade. The world had questions. Who was I? What was my background? Why me? Our wedding was described as a symbolic bridge between tradition and the future between European history and modern independence. But with every step forward, the criticism grew sharper. Royal watchers said I wasn't graceful enough, that my walk was too confident, too modern. Old family friends from London said I didn't deserve a title or luxury. Strangers hiding behind private accounts called me ordinary, unfit, not polished enough. The worst part? My own relatives mocked me in group chats they assumed I would never see. She embarrassed herself in front of royalty. One message read, "Watch her trip in the gown." Another joked, "Let's be real," someone concluded. She lucked out because no real royal lady would want Alexander. It was the kind of cruelty that would have broken me years ago. But now, instead of shattering, I sharpened. Every insult became fuel. Every rumor became motivation. Every mocking word became another layer of steel over my heart. I worked with etiquette coaches not because I wanted the approval of the world, but because I wanted to walk into that wedding as the strongest version of myself. I learned royal protocols, political diplomacy, posture refinement, symbolic gestures, historical traditions, everything expected of a bride stepping into such a spotlight. But I didn't learn these things to fit in. I learned them so no one could claim I wasn't prepared to stand beside the man I loved. The night before the wedding, I stood alone in my suite at the Beaumont estate. The room glowing with candlelight and soft gold shadows. I looked at my reflection, my hair pinned softly around my face, my skin luminous, my gaze focused and unwavering. For a moment, my past flickered across the mirror. Every comment, every laugh, every whispered insult. Yet none of it held weight anymore. I wasn't the girl they once mocked. I wasn't the woman they tried to label as too much, too opinionated, too ambitious, not wife material. I was a bride standing at the edge of a new life. A woman who had survived every attempt to make her smaller. A woman who refused to dim her own light. Tomorrow, I would walk toward the man who chose me fully, deeply, and unconditionally while the whole world watched. And when those chapel doors opened, when cameras flashed and critics stared, the world would not just see me. They would remember me. The morning of our wedding dawned over Windsor with a golden quietness that felt as though the universe itself had paused to witness what was about to unfold. Sunlight spilling gently across the ancient stone fountains, weaving through rose arches, and illuminating every corner of the Beaumont estate with a warmth that mirrored the fire in my chest. Outside the gates, international press had already gathered in endless rows. Reporters whispered into microphones, cameras clicked nonstop, and millions around the world waited with bated breath for the first glimpse of a bride they had already judged, dissected, doubted, and underestimated. Inside my suite, the air shimmered with champagne-tinted light as I stepped carefully into my gown. It was a masterpiece, silk that moved like water, crystalline sleeves catching the morning sun, and a train embroidered with magnolias that symbolized perseverance, survival, and rebirth. Instead of a heavy royal tiara, I wore a delicate crown of gold leaves, designed by Alexander himself. An intimate symbol of love rather than duty, of choice rather than tradition. When the attendants finished adjusting the final folds of fabric, I stood alone for a moment, staring at my reflection. I didn't see the girl my family mocked for being too opinionated, too ambitious, not wife material. I saw a woman forged from every insult and every triumph. My heart hammered not from fear, but from the sheer power of knowing I was about to step into a future I had built myself. As I approached the chapel doors, the world on the other side felt enormous, heavy, and breathtaking. A soft hush fell over the room, and then slowly the wooden doors opened. The effect was instant and electric. A wave of silence rippled through the crowd as millions watched the live stream from every corner of the earth. Cameras flashed like stars collapsing and reforming. The aisle stretched before me like a path carved through time itself. I stepped forward, and the reaction was a media collective gasp that vibrated through the entire space. Alexander, standing at the altar, looked at me with a kind of awe that weakened my knees. His eyes gleamed with emotion so raw that the moment seared itself permanently into my heart. I wasn't just a bride to him. I was the woman he had chosen above titles, expectations, and centuries of tradition. And at that moment, even the harshest critics fell silent. I walked down the aisle with a grace I'd earned through every heartbreak, every dismissal, every moment someone tried to diminish me. Each step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Behind the walls of the chapel, the world was already erupting. Social media platforms exploded under hashtags like hashtag Royal Heart Wedding, hashtag Elena and Alexander, and hashtag Modern Royalty. Live stream viewers spammed heart emojis. TikTok edits began trending before I even reached the altar. Fashion critics called my gown a masterpiece of quiet power. And influencers dissected every detail: the embroidery, the crown, the subtle symbolism. Millions screenshot my entrance. Millions more argued in the comments about whether I looked more like a queen, a goddess, or an icon redefining modern royalty. When I finally reached Alexander, his hands trembled as he held mine, his smile softening into something only I ever got to see. "You're breathtaking," he whispered. And in that instant, everything, the gossip, the insults, the doubts faded into static. The ceremony unfolded beneath vaulted ceilings and cascading white florals, the air thick with reverence and awe. By the time we said our vows, the live stream had become the most watched online event of the month, surpassing award shows, political broadcasts, and major global events. Meanwhile, back in London, my relatives, those who mocked me, belittled me, dismissed me, watched from living rooms and kitchens, their expressions frozen in disbelief. The same aunts who said I wasn't elegant enough stared silently at the screen. The cousins who joked I'd embarrass myself sat wide-eyed and speechless. The neighbors who called me ordinary struggled to reconcile their words. With the woman now standing at the altar in a gown that had already sparked global fascination. By the time we walked out of the chapel as husband and wife, the internet had officially crowned our wedding a cultural phenomenon. Fashion houses released statements praising the gown. News outlets called me a symbol of modern womanhood. Even royals from other countries discreetly liked the photos posted by the official account. And still my phone buzzed with messages from the same people who had belittled me for years. My cousin wrote, "We always knew you had potential." My aunt messaged, "You looked lovely today. Proud of you." And in the family group chat, the tone had shifted entirely. Suddenly, they adored me. Suddenly, why, they believed in me. But I didn't reply. Not one word. Because the truth was simple. I didn't need their validation. Not now, not ever again. After the reception, lanterns glowed softly in the Beaumont gardens and music drifted above the fountains. Alexander pulled me aside beneath a canopy of fairy lights. Fireworks crackled overhead, painting the sky in gold and violet. He took my hands in his and looked at me with a tenderness that melted every last shard of doubt. "You didn't just walk into this family," he whispered. "You transformed it." A slow smile spread across my face, equal parts joy, victory, and catharsis. "Funny," I murmured, leaning closer. "They said I wasn't marriage material." He kissed my forehead, his voice low and certain as he replied, "Then you proved him wrong in front of the whole world." And as the final burst of fireworks illuminated the night sky and the internet continued to celebrate our love story, I understood something profound and freeing. I had never been not wife material. I had simply been too extraordinary for the small minds that tried to define me. And now the entire world could see exactly who I was, unapologetically, undeniably, beautifully enough.